Hey Guardians, in last week's episode, I interviewed a long-time experienced Destiny 2 Sherpa, Mr. Dan Finity, about several areas of the game, and if you haven't listened to that episode, I would encourage you to listen to it in addition to today's episode, because we're asking some of the same questions to today's guest, who is on the opposite side of the spectrum, someone who recently, unintentionally, found themselves playing Destiny 2, which you'll hear about in today's show. So let's roll. Hey Guardians, welcome to the Destiny Help Desk podcast, a show that's designed to help you with the little bits of the Destiny 2 online game. Hey, my name is Todd the Gator, and whether you're a brand new Guardian to the game or a returning player, I'm here to help you explain the constantly changing dynamics of this game, bring you up to speed, and get you ready to jump in and start your Destiny journey. This is the audio component to my YouTube channel, which is Todd the Gator, 2 Ds and GATR, or you can visit youtube.com/@ToddTheGator. If you're more of a visual learner or want to refresh your memory of today's subject, you will always find a link to the video pertaining to this topic. Just check in those show notes down below there. If you have any questions for me that I might answer on the show at a later time, please email me at toddthegator@gmail.com, or you can send me a voicemail with your question at speakpipe.com/Destiny Help Desk. All of these links will be in the show notes down below as well. There are no stupid questions in Destiny, so if you need answers, please don't hesitate to send them my way. This podcast is here to serve you, and who knows, your question just might help a fellow newer Guardian out there. You can also DM me on Twitter at Todd the Gator as well. All right, let's get into it. Hey Guardians, our guest today is a father, a grandfather, and devoted husband who is fascinated with this game we call Destiny 2. Please welcome John the Bounty Hunter.
I live in central eastern Kentucky. If you know Mullet on the forums, I don't live very far from him. It was odd that we were just talking one night and he lives in Richmond and I live in Mount Sterling. And so they're about an hour from each other. And he was like, oh man, we got to get together and have lunch or something. So we intend to do that. We haven't done it yet, but we want to. I also live in close proximity to another Discord member who's new as well as I am, is Razagul. Me and him are kind of buddies and we came in at the same time. So that was cool. I sell insurance. I work for Kentucky Farm Bureau and, sell property and casualty insurance, house insurance, car insurance, the whole 9 yards. And have been doing that I've been with that company for about 10 years. I've been selling in the insurance business for about 20 years. I'm married, have 2 grown children and a grandchild. Everybody's doing well and we're all happy and healthy and fit as a fiddle and couldn't be any more blessed to be together as a family. I'm an old school gamer, man. I've been interested in anything that beeped or had lights on it since I was old enough to walk around. And so coming from a kind of a poor area of the country, we grew up, we didn't have a lot of money for stuff. And, but we would occasionally go down to the store, in a local store or something. They would have pinball machines and I always enjoyed that stuff. We didn't actually, and then would go over to a friend's house and they had an Atari 2600 and it was a whole new world. I had no idea what that was about. I can remember playing Pong on somebody's TV and just thinking this was the coolest thing ever. I didn't actually have my own system until the Nintendo NES. The original Nintendo Entertainment System. And we got that in the mid to late 80s, and me and my brother, and it was no turning back. And I've been gaming ever since that. I have been just an absolute nerd my entire life. And so, I was going to, when I was in high school, I was going to graduate and major in physics. I was going to work at NASA. That was the plan.
Oh, nice.
And, my teachers and stuff told me I was smart enough to do it. But when I got to college, suddenly it was like, oh, cool, no restrictions. I can do what I want to. And that was stupid. Yeah. And I flunked out.
We've all been there.
So I ended up going back to college several years later and finishing my degree. But at this point, I had a family and I had to worry about putting food on the table. And so I went and got a business degree and went that route. But the point is that story is that science and nerd stuff and electronics and all that stuff has always just been in my wheelhouse. I love comic books. I love sci-fi animated movies. I love, epic fantasy stuff, just anything like that. And so video games obviously is right there in that world. And so gaming has been on and off over the years. There have been times where I was heavily into it, and there would be times where I would take extended breaks, but I always came back. And in dealing with certain life situations, it became easier to do it recently because I'm less mobile than I used to be. There's certain health and things going on that require me not to be as active as I once was. And so if I find myself at the house more than I used to, then certainly gaming is a cool way to interact and keep myself entertained. And the community that we found, with you guys is excellent. And, so it's just, I couldn't, it's my new niche. I was, into comic books heavily, right? Mm-hmm. During, cause, I started buying comic books when I was in college and collecting them. And I had like 26 long white, you've seen those comic book boxes, they're long white boxes, right? Oh, yeah. And I had like 26 or 30 of those long white boxes of comics in my house that were just full of comic books. Man, I just bought comics constantly. And I ended up selling a bunch of those. And at some point, kind of got aggravated with the direction of the stories, and the publishers are not doing what I think are the best things for the characters and the storylines. And they've made a lot of changes recently and didn't like the direction they were going, especially with the big two, DC and Marvel. And so I said, you know what? I'm just going to take a break from comic books. So I stopped buying comics. And when that void opened up, and this has been a few years back, then I needed to fill it with something. And so just gaming I just fell right back in and been heavily gaming ever since. I still like comics, but now, and when I read comics, I try to read old collected editions of things. Like I'll buy, the Phoenix Saga and I'll read that or something. I'll put it on the bookshelf and that kind of thing. I'm not buying anything current, but I tend to want to reread that Silver Age stuff. That's classic stuff because I still enjoy that stuff. I play golf. I haven't played much this year because of some, the different things I've been dealing with on my health, but I'm anxious to get back out there. I'm not very good at it. But occasionally you'll hit a great shot. And when you do, the endorphin high off of that is enough to make you want to come back and hit 100 bad shots to looking for that one good one, right?
I feel your pain.
And so I do enjoy golfing, but mostly I enjoy golfing because I play with my uncle and my brother and my father, and we're kind of a foursome. So the community, going back to community, the community of the foursome that we have when we go play is almost as important as the game itself. About 2005, about the time that the Marvel Universe was getting started, Iron Man, I think, was out or either coming out in the next little bit. I looked at a buddy of mine. Well, he games, but I don't think he plays Destiny. Okay. And I looked at him, but he's also a big comic geek. And I said, have you been listening to any of these new things called podcasts? Because this is 05, so podcasting is kind of a new thing. Yeah. Yeah. He said, not really. And I said, well, listen to some of these. And so I downloaded some of them and put him on he had a PSP.
Oh my God.
and so I ported them from my laptop computer over to his PSP. And I said, take these home and listen to them. And he come back and he said, where can you get new episodes of this? And I said, well, we can download them every time you come over and I'll put the newest ones on your PSP and you can listen to them.
That was that was the age of the MP3 players, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Wow. Yeah, that was, and so, I think he eventually got an MP3 player. I eventually bought an iPod Classic. Now, this is not the iPod Mini. This is not the touch ones. This is the one with the big one with the scroll wheel, right?
Yeah. I used to have one of those. Yeah. I still have one of those.
I still have it too. It's in my drawer. I won't get rid of it because it was way expensive. Yeah. And it had a ton of space. I had my entire music collection on it. Well, that's a side story.
Yeah.
But,
like a brick. It's amazing.
Yeah. It was heavy, right? Yeah, but anyway, and then at some point I was like, did you hear what so-and-so said on their podcast last week about such and such comic? And he was like, yeah, I don't agree with them at all. I was like, we could do that. And I think we got better opinions than they do anyway. And he was like, yeah, I do too. And the next thing I know, I'm shopping for microphones. And I ended up buying a microphone set and a little bitty soundboard, and we were set up and we were making episodes, and we did all right at it. We made overall the course of the show, and of course life gets in the way, and that's the issue that we kept having. Something, either my health changed or the schedule with the kids and baseball practices and things changed, and it made it hard to do it. So we were kind of on again, off again. Right. But we ended up making almost 400 episodes of the show.
400? Over how many years?
About 2016, I think, was the last year we did it. But we were at our height, we were putting out like 3 episodes a week.
Wait a minute. So you did 10 years of this show?
Yeah.
Wow. Was it a weekly?
Yeah. So the basic premise of it was that it was, because comic books hit comic book shops every Wednesday. Sure. So the idea was that we would swing by the shop and we would get whatever new books would come out that week. We would cram and read them over the next day or two, and then either over the weekend or Monday, as quick as we could get together, we would sit down and say, here's what came out this past week and here's why it sucked or here's why it was good. And we would offer our opinions. So it was like a comic book review show. But then as comic book movies got more and more prevalent, then we got to go do movie reviews and then they started doing like animated movies and, things like that. And then like Scott Pilgrim comes out and they're like, that's a comic book movie in case anybody didn't know. And then the Wanted came out and, things like that. And I was like, that's a comic book. And so like the 30 Days of Night, I said, these are all movies that people don't even have any idea used to be comic books.
Right.
And so we were covering all that stuff and it was big. And then we would go to conventions and we would go to like New York Comic Con or we would go to Wizard World Chicago or go to different places and we would sit down and interview some of the creators and stuff. And so, like I said, we made almost 400 episodes, I think, by the time it was over and got a pretty good reach. We were kind of, I don't want to act like we were bigger than we were, but we were known in the community. Like we walked by a creator's table that he's an artist on a certain book. He would say, hey, John, hey, Charlie. And he would, he knew who we were. So that was cool. And so I think at some point we had like at least 1,500 regular subscribers.
That's awesome, man. Well, now that we know a little bit about John the Bounty Hunter, I then ask him that question that my co-host Hazel and I always ask our guest on Guardian Downcast. And that's, how did you find the game Destiny 2?
So that would be Razagul's fault. He's the other guy that I kind of brought into the community with me at the same time I came in.
Now, how did you how did you know Razagul again?
Okay. Him and I, are friends and have been in the real world face to face, people that you actually know in real life. And, me and him both game and have talked about games and game together for a long time. But I never was a shooter fan. I couldn't stand shooters. The last shooter I actively played was like Doom. I mean, the original Doom,
right?
The pixelized version one, that was 2D it was just, and as 3D, gaming took off and as, shooters got more and more popular, and things like Quake came along and then Halo and then other things, and then Call of Duties and the Battlefield and stuff like that. That was just never my scene.
Really?
I just never cared for it. I never cared for a shooter. I didn't want that first person's perspective. I didn't like it. And it was just, I much preferred action games, your God of Wars, things of that nature, where you have like a 3/4 perspective. You're back from your guy. You can see him a little better. Button mashers where it's all just like hit sword, that kind of thing.
Dynasty Warriors was my hack and slasher.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, those were always my favorite kinds of games. And then I'm over at Raz's house one day, and this has been a couple years ago. And, he's like, I'm like, what are you playing? And he was like, Destiny. I'm like, what's that about? So he gave me kind of a brief overview of, what the setting is and where you're at and your Space Marine kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And, I'm watching him play. I go, well, this looks kind of interesting. And I said, but I'm not into shooters. He said, you ought to play it. You'll like it. And I was like, no, you don't understand. Me and shooters, man, we don't get along. And so he made a case for it, but I just flatly rejected it. And it was shortly after I got my PS5. Mm-hmm. And, I was looking for something to play. And, I talked to him on the phone. He was playing Destiny and he was like, you ought to give Destiny a try. And I was like, nah, man, you've come at me with that before. I don't want to hear it. I don't want nothing to do with it.
Quit pushing it on me, dude.
Yeah, I know, right? He's like a pill pusher or something. Like
you need a fire team member, man.
But he really did. He really was looking for somebody to help him with some stuff. And, I just was like, no. And then one day, a day or two later, I was sitting there going, I don't have anything to play right now. I'm waiting for something to come out the next little bit or something. And I was like, I guess I could download it. It's free to play, right?
Right.
That's what they say. That's what all the advertisements say. Free to play. I was like, all right, well, I could download it and just see. And so I downloaded it. And so I'm goofing around and then Raza calls me the other evening. He says, what have you been doing? I was like, playing Destiny. He went, what? And I was like, yeah. I said, but I'm still not sold on this. I said, I can't tell what's going on. I can't tell what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know anything that's going on in this. And he was like, well, here, let me show you some things. And so he started walking me through it. But I still wasn't sold on the game, right? I still wasn't hooked, as they say, until he was in a clan and I wasn't part of the clan. I wasn't a part of any clan at that point. And, they were trying to run Kingsfall one night. Mm-hmm. And he said, we need somebody to come in and get a checkpoint so that we can step out and load back in. He said, John, come in and be part of the fire team, get the checkpoint so we can use you. And I was like, all right, fine. So I stand in there and I get the checkpoint so they can change their characters or whatever. And he said, well, we're a man short. Do you want to run this with us? And I was like, do you think I can? He says, well, we'll try to carry you. He said, you're really underleveled. It's really sad, at this point, because you just got started. You don't have any good weapons. You don't have any good armor. You don't have anything, right? He said, but if you just sort of stand back, we'll try to carry you. And when it comes your turn to jump on the platforms and stuff, I'll try to tell you what to do. It was really sad. I was like, I couldn't survive 30 seconds in there. Once everything popped off and bad guys were shooting and stuff, I was just dead. Yeah. And he would be like, stand back in this corner. They won't hit you there. They still hit me. I was still dead. And after 3 or 4 times of that, he said, man, you're like a brother to me. I love you. He said, but you're just not going to make it. He said, you're going to have to step out. He said, because we want to try to finish this tonight. We're just not going to be able to with you here. And that sunk in me like somebody stuck a knife. I was like, oh my God. I said, well, you wait and see. I'll get leveled up and I'll be back.
Yep.
And from that point forward, it became, I don't know why, but I took it as a personal challenge. I was like, all right, fine. I'm going to get leveled up. And so I immediately went on the gauntlet. I had created a warlock that was my only character. I didn't have any of the other two. And I went back. I just was hardcore pressing to get leveled up gear, leveled up weapons, increase my light level, get up to what I needed to be. And from that point forward, it's just been no looking back. I play the game almost every day unless something comes up and I can't get to it. Right. And here I am, that was September of last year.
Okay.
And so here I am in August. It's been almost a year. It's a month short of being a year. And, I've got basically 3 pinnacle capped characters and most of the weapons that anybody would want. A few of the older stuff I don't have, but it's been a grind. It's been a journey, but it's been fantastic. I'm shocked that how much I adapted to the shooter platform that I previously hated, because Destiny has just a different kind of feel to it. Like I said, I had tried to play the re-released Doom from a few years back. Right. Hated it. I've even tried to play like that re-released Wolfenstein. Didn't care for it. I was like, shooters are not my thing. When I started playing Destiny, it just sort of clicked. And the experience, the gunplay worked for me on a level that no other shooter ever had.
It's the secret sauce, man. The gun.
Yeah, it is. It was really, really good. And I enjoyed it a lot.
The one thing I love about our other podcast, Guardian Downcast, is that we hear the real life stories of those gamers we're in a fire team with every week, but don't really know them. And Hazel and I attempt to peel back the curtains and, get a look inside one's life. I really think it brings our community closer together as we understand each other better. So what many of you probably don't know is that John's life got turned upside down when he was only 37 years old.
I have been, over the course of my life, strong as a mule, man. I was, 6 foot tall, 200 plus pounds, made of mostly muscle, and just grew up on a farm. I was strapping, and I never had an ache or a problem, never had been cut on for anything, never been in a serious accident. And I just lived a blessed life in that respect until 2013. And when 2013 rolled around, I just went to my doctor for a routine exam, and my doctor was, as they were apt to do, they'll feel of your neck, to feel of your, thyroid, and they'll feel your body. And he got down to my abdomen and he pressed on my stomach and he said, that feels a little odd there. Have you had any pain or discomfort or any kind? And I said, no, not even a little bit. It doesn't even hurt when you do that. And he said, well, it feels firmer than it ought to. He said, I'd like to take a look at it. And I said, well, all right, you're the doc. I trust you. I didn't know if it was gas or what it was. And he sent me for an ultrasound and they wouldn't tell me what they saw. They immediately turned around and sent me for a biopsy. And it was shortly after that I was sitting in a cancer doctor's office listening to him tell me that I had liver cancer. And I asked him point blank, I said, well, all right, this is something we can take care of, right? And he said, well, we're going to do our best to make you comfortable for whatever time you have left. And I was like, whoa. Because I've seen people with cancer, they get it cut out and they go on, they're fine, right? And I was like, this is just something we can just, what are you saying? This is a terminal situation? He said, absolutely. I said, well, how long do I, hang on, my wife's sitting there, she's starting to well up, tears rolling down her face. I said, how long do I have? He said, probably 3 to 6 months. Yeah, he was clearly wrong, but you imagine being completely devastated. And we were.
That terrifies me.
And so we went out, and later that week we went and we got our wills and stuff all taken care of and made sure that my teenage children at the time knew who were going to take them if something happened to me or to her or to both of us, if, God forbid, a car accident or something that we got, the things that you had neglected all these years.
Start thinking about
we just yeah, we just made sure to take care of all of that. And, I got real depressed and I was thinking, God, I'm too young. I was 37 years old. I'm like, I'm too young to die. This is crazy. And, it started getting into a dark place where all you think about is dying. And, then something and I'm a religious person, and something that you may not know about me is that I'm actually, a lay preacher. I actually pastored a church for a little while. I don't currently, but I still preach from time to time when called upon. And, I just decided that, I was going to dig into that faith and believe for something better. And I don't know if a lot of the people that listen to the show are religious, and I don't want to get too heavily into the theatrical part of it, but I feel like I was really blessed at that point, and things started getting better. And so when I started having a positive outlook, and when I started believing for something good to happen, it seemed like every time I went back to the doctor, the news would get a little better. He was like, well, we've done some analysis on your type of cancer, and it seems like it's not as aggressive as we thought it was. He said, you may actually live a couple years. I was like, all right, thank you, Jesus. I'll take it. And, we went on and we did what we had to do. And they gave me some chemotherapy pills that I had to take, and we took those, and they really weren't effective. So we quit taking them because they weren't doing anything.
Right.
But every time I would go back for another scan, he would say like, well, it doesn't seem like it's growing very fast, because some people get cancer, man, and they 6 weeks later, they're gone. It just, some of it's extremely aggressive. The kind that I was fortunate enough, if you'll call it that, to get is very slow moving, but it's like a tank. Nothing will kill it. Right. And so they could give me chemotherapy. They could give me radiation. They could give me all these things, but it hardly touches it. Right. It just will not melt under any circumstance, but it's slow as Christmas. And so we ended up just, keeping an eye on it, and we did little spot treatments here and there. They did a radiation burn on my liver at one point to try to burn some of it off, and that was kind of effective and maybe give me a little more time or whatever. But we finally got to the place where my liver was starting to swell, and my stomach was actually starting to distend because my liver was larger than it normally would be. Sure. So this is 2020. I was in there talking to the doctor one day, and I was like, I know we've got an ongoing issue here. How's this looking to you? And he said, well, based on the rate of growth and what we've observed for the last 7 years, your liver's only going to be able to hold this so much longer. The thing about it is that my liver function was really good, despite having cancer in it, because the liver cells were all still doing their job. They just were crowded with cancer, right? Yep. So the liver function was still good. I wasn't jaundiced and I wasn't in liver failure. Right. I just had a liver that was plumb full of cancer. And so at some point, the thing's going to just like rupture and explode. So he's like, we really need to see about getting you on a transplant list. And so I had been trying to get on a transplant list. It had not been effective because they reserve transplant for people who are in liver failure. Because, the organ goes to those who have the most need. And so my liver test all showed good. My liver function was good. And so they had to go back in and convince the Cleveland Clinic transplant doctors that I had an urgent case, not based on what my lab results were, because lab results look good, but based on just look at this guy. His stomach's all sticking out. He's going to explode if we don't do something. Mm-hmm. And finally, at some point, they got him to agree with me, and I was scheduled for transplant. So then at that point, it becomes a waiting game. You start waiting for the phone call. And then when the phone call comes, you have to load up from Central Kentucky and drive to Cleveland immediately. Right. And we got the call, and it was March of 2020. COVID had just started. So we load up, we go to Cleveland. My wife's not allowed in the hospital because COVID regulations. Right. So I got the liver transplant and spent the next week and a half in the hospital by myself. They would let me FaceTime her, but I made a pretty good recovery. And then we had to spend the next month or so up there just to let the doctors keep check on me so they wouldn't send me back to Kentucky. So we had to stay in an apartment in Cleveland. And, then at that point, they said, you look good. And they sent me home, and they've been keeping check on me. I have to do lab work and stuff to make sure this new liver is functional and everything, but it's been good. Now, here recently, unfortunately, they did a full body scan and they found some spots reappear on some of my bones. So the liver's still good. I got a brand new liver. It's spotless, but they've got some cancerous spots that appeared on some of my bones around my body. So the process starts over. It's slow, and we have to figure out how to proceed and how to treat it. And as time goes on, the treatments get better and better. And so I'm 10 years into this fight, but at this point, it's old hat. I'm used to it. And the doctors bring me in. They'll do a radiation zap on my leg or something, and they go, all right, we'll see you next month. I'm like, yeah, all right. But anybody else dealing with cancer, it would be devastating. And it was for me at first, but it's odd, the human ability to get used to anything. And it's odd that once you've dealt with it this long, suddenly it doesn't seem like a big deal anymore. Now, certainly it's still an issue and it's still hanging over our heads. And, who knows what the future holds, but I'm confident that, this is me being a little bit religious, so I'm not trying to rub anybody the wrong way, but I'm confident that God's been this good to me and has brought me this far, that he's not going to let me down now. And I think that there's something amazing in store yet in my situation, and I can't wait to see what it is. I don't know if the doctors are going to come up with a new cure. I don't know if there's going to be some radical treatment that they're going to get approved that'll take care of it. I don't know what's going to happen.
So what is your current assessment? What is your prognosis at this moment?
It's still considered stage 4 because it's metastasized and moved to other parts of my body.
Okay.
I currently have about 8 different bones in my body that have got a spot of cancer on them. I got like one in my upper arm, one on my shoulder, one in my mid spine and lower spine, pelvic bone, both humerus bones in my upper thighs.
Can you feel anything or?
No, I wouldn't. If somebody wasn't telling me that it was there, I wouldn't have any idea.
I got you.
But I did start having some lower back pain that I thought was arthritis. I went in to see the docs and they said, well, there's a spot there about in that spot. It may be pressing on something. Okay. So they did a spot radiation treatment there. They just tried to burn it out with it's like getting an x-ray, but a really intense one right in one place. Right.
Right.
And, try to burn it out. And, after that, it hasn't hurt me anymore. So we'll see. We won't know if it was really successful until we do the next full body scan, but they only do one of those every 6 or 8 months. They did one on my legs recently because they were concerned that if those leg bones become compromised, if the cancer eats into it, then I won't be able to hold myself up. The bone will break.
Right.
And so they said that would be a bad situation because that's like quality of life changing, right? Yeah. So we did radiation treatments just a week or so ago on those. I feel for the most part fine. And I take my anti-rejection medicine every day to keep that new liver from getting kicked out of my body. And, I go on and life is good. And I go to my job and I play with my grandbaby. And, for a casual person observing me from the outside, you would never know anything was wrong with me. I hope it can be inspiring to somebody who maybe is dealing with, whether it's something like that or any kind of difficult life situation. I think the key to dealing with any difficult life situation is keeping a positive outlook. If you have a positive outlook, things tend to just go better. You'll be able to see the silver lining in a dark cloud and easier than you can if you have a negative outlook. I think that's the key to it.
When we come back, I'll ask John about the challenges he faced in Destiny 2 as a newer player, the mistakes he made along the way that the new player might avoid, how not to get overwhelmed with all the content in the game, and how he got through his first raid when we come back. Hey Guardians, just a quick announcement that I've achieved my first goal of reaching 1,000 new and returning Guardians out there on my YouTube channel as subscribers, and it continues to grow every day. In fact, I've surpassed the 2,700 Guardians mark who have subbed to my channels thus far. My goal is to reach 5,000 by the end of the summer, so please help me in that endeavor if you haven't already. And I wanted to thank you for your support, and hopefully the videos I've released thus far have given you some clarity in traversing all the little things of this Destiny 2 game. As the latest Destiny 2 annual expansion has been released, Lightfall, my goal will be continue to help new and returning Guardians out there tackle the next iteration of the Destiny universe story and activities. But I'm also going to add some more opinion pieces in there as well. Let me know what you think about those. And of course, don't forget my live streams. So keep an eye out on my YouTube channel for these videos, and the audio components of them will also be released here, right here, on this podcast as well in the future. So if you haven't already subscribed to my YouTube channel, Todd the Gator, what are you waiting for? Jump in there and follow the channel, hit that notification bell so you'll be alerted to those videos when they first arrive. So thanks. I also wanted to mention that you can now become a channel member directly to support my content. It's super easy to do. Just click that join button below the video and it will explain the rest. If you become a channel member, you'll receive a special channel member badge that will be visible whenever you comment on my videos and also when in my live streams on YouTube. There will be a member-only chats on live streams on occasion, and your comments will be highlighted as well. So do me a solid and sign up to be a channel member. Think of it as buying me a shot at the bar once a month, just to say thanks. I appreciate you. The first question I had for John was, what mistakes did he make when he first started playing this game? And more importantly, what are those mistakes that new players trying to get into the game today can avoid?
I would say don't get too concerned early on about your gear. You obviously want the best gear, but I think the best thing that an early player can do is not chase stats, but chase levels, right? So you want to get your pinnacle rewards. And so then you want to just put on whatever the highest gear you have is. When I first started, I really wanted to know, well, what are all these stats? What are resilience? What are recovery? What are, discipline? What are all these things, and how do they affect my build? And there's nothing wrong with knowing those things, but when you're brand new, level climbing is all you really need to worry about. And I wouldn't spend any time worrying about that or worrying about, do you have the best gear or the best weapons, whatever? Just find the thing that you like to use, right? So I remember, and when Raza talk about this from time to time, when I was playing early on, one of the first exotic weapon that I ever got in the game was Cerebus +1. And I fell in love with that gun. And I kept it on constantly. And no matter what other weapons I had, even when I got better weapons, I was still running Cerebus +1 because I got attached to it, right? And it just felt right in my hand. So on the one hand, I would say run what feels good to you and don't worry too much about it. But on the other hand, don't fall in love with a particular piece of gear because it can actually hamper you as far as your build stuff is concerned. But that's for later. New light players, I would just suggest, if you're playing and that gun feels good in your hands and you're having success with it, just use it. Just go on.
Yeah, Dan mentioned last week that there was like a big, was it like a 5-minute cutscene that kind of gave you the history of Destiny? Did you watch that cutscene? Did you make it through?
Yes, I did. Yeah, but the problem is that if you're a new player, depending on what season you're in or what expansion you're on, you'll get multiple cutscenes that don't have anything to do with anything.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so you'll get the new light cutscene, right? Uh-huh. And then you'll play through the new light cutscene that explains what the dark, we had a golden age and then the darkness came and, you explain that.
Right.
You'll play through that. You'll get dumped out of the tower and go, all right, well, I'm going to take a break. You turn the game off. You turn the game back on and you'll get the Lightfall cutscene. Yeah, so you'll get the Lightfall cutscene with the witness. He's making the triangle on the traveler and that whole thing. So you play for a little while. You turn that off. You turn it back on and you're going to get the season 21 cutscene at the start of this season. So every time the game knows where you're at and they go, well, he's not watched this cutscene yet and he's not watched this cutscene yet. And so every time you turn it on, you'll get until they catch you up and then you current. So it's a little funny because every time you watch one of these cutscenes, you only played one mission and then you turn the game off and you turn it back on. And now you're watching a different cutscene for different content that you don't know anything about. So yeah, it's a little confusing. Once I learned that YouTube was a resource, I spent hours and hours and hours. Whenever I wasn't playing the game, I was on YouTube. And whether I'm watching, lore videos or whether I'm watching how-to videos, I was there all the time. Build crafting wasn't a concern of mine too early on. And so, like I said, I was trying to just climb light levels, but I kept looking at those resilience numbers and those numbers, and I kept asking Raza, who was, like I said, who was my mentor, what all this stuff was, and he kept trying to explain it to me. He kept saying, well, resilience is important because that's going to keep you from being damaged, and then he would try to explain what each one of them did. And my eyes would just kind of glaze over, and I was just like, oh, all right, I don't really understand. And then I didn't understand the mod system, and I didn't understand how any of that worked and what mods did and how they affected your stats and all of that. So it was challenging to learn all that because Destiny is such a deep game. Everything from when you look at all the different aspects of the game, it's not just, it's not Super Mario Brothers, right? You don't run and jump on guys' heads and try to make it to the flagpole, right? It's so deep in the sense that not only is there a compelling story, but there's build crafting. And so you can create your builds and then they introduce weapon crafting and you can do weapon crafting and all these things. And there's even, all the cosmetic gear. So if you want to spend money, man, you can really make yourself look nice too. It's so nuanced and so faceted on so many different levels. And so you've got to understand everything from how the stats work and tweaking your stats and what's the best stat. If can you get a triple 100 build? Well, what does it take to get to that? And what are the best stats to have at 100 versus the stats that are not so important? And it takes a long time to understand that. And like I said, Bungie doesn't do anything to explain it to you. I mean, absolutely nothing to explain it to you. When I got confused about it, I just chose to ignore it. I was just like, all right, well, I can't worry about that. Okay. And so it wasn't until much later. It wasn't probably until like season 19, season of Seraph. And so I started in September. Now we're into almost like December, January before I really started trying to craft builds. So it took me, a good 3-4 months to level up my character to the place where I felt like he was strong enough that now it mattered the particulars of my gear. And so, because it took me until season 19 to get Pinnacle Cat. It was a long grind.
As Destiny 2 has been around for nearly 7 years now, it's an enormous game. And there is so much storylines and content in this game, even though they've sunset some of the past storylines. Like I asked Danfinity last week, I again ask John the Bounty Hunter, how can new players avoid being overwhelmed with all of the new storylines and just all the massive information that's in Destiny 2?
So as a longtime gamer, there's this urge in you to do everything right. And you're never going to in Destiny. You're going to, whether you fail missions or whether you just didn't know certain things existed. I mean, I'll routinely find out, well, I didn't even know that was there, whatever it was, like a secret chest or someplace. You're going to miss things. And so you can't take yourself too seriously in the game. I think when you're first starting out, I think you just have to find something you enjoy doing, right? So for me, early on, it was bounties. And so that's part of the reason where the name comes from. Mm-hmm. I found out that I could do bounties relatively easy. Gunsmith bounties, they're not hard. You just go to Europa or go someplace and just shoot bad guys, and you'll eventually get so many hand cannon kills or so many scout rifle kills or whatever. And there's a sense of accomplishment for that. And so when you have a sense of accomplishment and you've enjoyed yourself, you feel good. And so just find something you like to, if you find Gambit to be entertaining, go run Gambit. You'll run the heck out of it and run it in the ground if you want to, if you're enjoying yourself. What you should not do is you should not try to run content that either you're not ready for or that you don't understand in some kind of weird, I need to do this mentality. I had some kind of idea when I first started out that what do I need to be doing? I need to be doing X number of bounties a week, but in addition to that, I need to be doing some kind of story content. And in addition to that, I need to be doing the seasonal challenges. And in addition to that, I need to be trying to get my titles. And so when you can easily overwhelm yourself, mm-hmm. Don't do that to yourself. Just find something that you enjoy. It would have been so easy for me to at any point go, you know what, this is too much trouble. And just turn it off. And so the only thing that kept me coming back was I had a really good friend that played it. And so the idea that me and him could play together was good. Mm-hmm. And two, I felt challenged and I wanted to see how good I could get at the game. So that meant that I just I would get mad. I would get angry. There were things I would try to run. I remember the first time I tried to run an exotic quest by myself. It was, the Seraph one on the ship, Revision Zero. And I had run through the mission in a fire team. I knew the mission, but, I'm relatively new. I've only got one character. I've only got a warlock. And I said, in order to get all the achievements, I've got to run this solo. If I wanted the Seraph pin. And that's the other thing I really enjoy doing. On a side note, I really enjoy buying those stupid pins. Bungie's got me hooked and I hate him for it. But anyway.
The title pins?
Yeah, I buy every one I earn. I said, I really want to get this title. This is the only thing. And so I spent a couple days banging my head against the wall trying to solo that mission. Now, to my benefit, I actually finally did do it. But I really beat myself up over it. And it made me feel bad that like other players could go through it relatively easy and I couldn't. And it made me feel like, is there something wrong with me? Am I not as good as those guys? Am I not as good a gamer? Do I not have the same hand-eye coordination or reflexes? What is it? At the end of the day, it was mostly just I had really lousy weapons and armor. And so I wasn't at a level where I needed to be to complete that. I did finally get it done. And when you do that, there's a great sense of accomplishment but I go back and I look at it now and I go, was it worth the pain? I think I might have been better off just having fun, just finding a fun activity and doing it. And I think because whatever you're doing in the game, you're constantly getting better. You're constantly getting better. You're constantly earning glimmer. You're constantly earning shards. That'll eventually turn into more equipment, more weapons. You eventually are going to earn an ascendant shard from some activity. You're eventually going to be able to buy an exotic that you didn't have. You're eventually you're going to get there is the point. Mm-hmm. Now you may have missed out on some of the best weapons from past seasons that you weren't here for. As people talk about running Divinity all the time. I don't have a Divinity. I don't have access to it. Well, I just don't have it. I've got a bunch of other really cool weapons though. And so I got plenty I can use. So don't fret too much over it. You know how many stupid weapons are in this game? like 600 or 700 or just a crazy number of weapons that are in this game. And a bunch of them are just carbon copies of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so don't lose sleep over the thing you didn't get or don't have. Just play the game and just enjoy yourself. Run activities that you enjoy doing. Find the thing that gives you the most pleasure and do it. And I guarantee that as you keep going, you'll get better. You'll get better. You'll get more powerful. You'll get stronger. You'll get your gunplay will get better just from experience. Everything will line out, and pretty soon you'll find yourself gaming at a better level where that challenging content that you were banging your head against a month or two ago is not as hard as it was. I think the first thing I would do would be to immediately try to get caught up on past DLCs, because the problem is if you don't go back and do Shadowkeep and Lightfall and Witch Queen, then assuming that you've not played those before, one, you don't know the story, so that's important. But if you have played them before and you're starting over, you still have to do them because it opens up the world, right? And so I can't, on my hunting and my hunter and my Titan character that I created, even though they're mostly pinnacle capped, I think they're a level or two below, but they're right there like 1809.
Yeah, that's fine.
Even though I've got them leveled up, neither one of those two characters, because I just created them a season ago, neither one of those two characters have got Shadowkeep and Lightfall done, or Witch Queen for that matter.
Right.
And so what that means is that if I want to go bounty prep for next season on those characters, I can't do the bounties from those.
Because the vendors aren't open. Yep.
Yeah, the vendors aren't open. So I think the best thing that a new experienced person can do is just start like you're going to play through the story. I think that makes the most sense. You're just going to play through the story. You can't play Red War, you can't play Forsaken, all that stuff's been, closeted or whatever. But I think you start at Shadowkeep, you play through it, you open the world up, you get the Lectern open, you get Erismorn open, then you move on to Lightfall and you play through that, you get Varix open and you get the world opened up, you get all the lost sectors open and everything, access to them. Then you move on to Witch Queen and then you move on to Lightfall. I think once you've got the universe open to you, I think this is the key to the game, because now you can do anything. And so that's where I would start. And then once you've got that unlocked, then, then it's whatever you feel like doing. But until then, you're shackled to some degree.
I asked this same question of Dan Finity last week, and I'm asking it again to John the Bounty Hunter. If he had a small team from Destiny, a small, highly qualified team that could change anything about the new player experience, what direction would he go? I'm curious to see how his answers differ from our Raid Sherpa from last week.
I would have to come at it from my own perspective and how I came into the game and what I would have liked to have had when I came into the game. For me, I think the New Light experience, the first missions that you run, I think they could do a much better job explaining everything and setting you up for success in that whole intro to the game, right? Because they sort of just throw you into the deep end of the pool. They give you some missions to run and then they dump you out at the tower and they go, here you go. And you're like, okay, now what? I think there should be more tutorials. There should be more explanation. There should be more walkthroughs. There should be more guides. There should be, and I think maybe to some degree they've tried to do this with the Guardian ranks and how the Guardian ranks are set up for new players and it walks you through certain things you should do. That wasn't there when I started. Those are new from when I started. But, I think about other games where I enjoyed Ghost of Tsushima a lot. And when I played Ghost of Tsushima, there wasn't anything in the game that you had to do that the game didn't take you slowly through it and explain how to do it first and then turned you loose and let you do it. With Destiny, it doesn't feel like there's any of that. It doesn't feel like it's just saying, here you are at the tower. You can go run some Crucible if you want to. You can go run some Vanguard strikes if you want to. You can go play Gambit if you want to, or you can, go, chase bounties. But you're kind of scratching your head. You don't really know where you should go or what you should do. So I think a more guided walkthrough, I think, would be really, really, really helpful for the game. I think that for the new player, because when he first comes into the game, you are really, really lost. And I'm fortunate that I had people I knew that had been playing the game a long time that could take me by the hand and say, okay, here's what you should focus on. But I watched a lot of content videos from YouTube, but you really shouldn't have to, really. The game should want to walk you through it and show you how to do those things. And I don't think it does a good job. I mean, so much so that when you start playing the past expansions, you can play them out of order and there's nothing to keep you from doing that. But then the story's all messed up. It's a little weird when you think about it. I don't know another game in the world that you can do that with. So I think they could do a whole much better job of walking you through the intro of the game and setting you up for the progression of the story and how it goes and getting you on the right foot.
I then asked John, is it too late for new Guardians to enter this game going into its final shape, so to speak?
No, but as I said earlier, you need maybe some hand-holding. You need somebody that maybe has played, and that's what makes, I think, the Guardian Downcast community so strong, is that we are going to bring in new players and we're going to say, hey, I know you've never run a dungeon before. Let us help you with that. Hey, I know you've never been on a raid. Let us show you how this works. And I think that makes it accessible to people that who normally wouldn't know what any of that was or how to do it or how to go about it. I think there's a lot of room for people to come in, but you're going to have to be willing to play a lot of catch up. Now, the closer we get to the end, the harder it gets. Right. Because why would you want to come in as a new player 2/3 of the way in through the next year, right? If it's 2024 and we're well into final shape and we're almost to the end of it, who would want to start Destiny at that point? I don't know. Unless Bungie goes back and makes all of the past content available that you could replay. And we're talking about Red War. We're talking about all that stuff that's gone now. That would be a reason for me to want to come back in and redo that stuff if I didn't have access to it previously. Yeah. That would be fantastic. But if it's just a matter of, story, then, and especially if we've got a new version of Destiny coming, like if they're, I don't know what you want to call it, Destiny 3 or just the next chapter of Destiny 2 or whatever it is, then depending on how that shakes out, it would affect whether or not new people want to play now or just wait for the next thing.
We get a lot of new members in the Guardian Downcast show community and Discord. And I am curious how many of our new members that are returning or newer players are kind of hesitant to get into Looking for Group, which is our 100.io bot, by the way, and join up and play with other Guardians, especially in a dungeon or a raid. So I asked John, as he is experienced getting into his first raid, what advice he would have for some of us out there that maybe are hesitant to make that next big leap.
Go in with somebody that knows what they're doing and just let them guide you. And it's really, don't LFG it on Bungie, because you're going to get, there's a very good, not necessarily have to, but there's a high probability that you're going to get, know what to do or get kicked group, right? And so if you go in there and you don't know what to do, you're maybe a little underleveled and you're going to struggle and you need somebody to help you, you're not going to have a good experience. People are going to be rude to you. People are going to be aggravated with you because they're looking to do a completion. They want to be done with it. They don't want to babysit you. And they're entitled to be that way if they want to. I don't think it's a positive experience and I wouldn't recommend it for anybody. I would recommend that you get you a good group of people, either people in your personal life that like to play, or you find a good community online, such as the Guardian Downcast community, yes, where there is a group of people who want to help you with those things. And I said it was for me going into the raid for the first time. I was just like, I'd never been in one. I didn't know what to do, but I had you there. I had Hazel there. I had Panda and a few others. I think Moose was there. Mm-hmm. And it was just a matter of, all right, John, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go over here. You're going to shoot this thing. You're going to run around. You're going to dunk this thing, whatever it was, right? And it said, all right, can you think you got that? All right. And then we would do it. And either we would wipe or we wouldn't be successful or we would, and we would go on to the next part. And then it said, now on this section, and then we would do it again. We eventually, the whole thing took 2 or 3 hours, but we got through it and it was a ton of fun. As long as you've got people who are teaching in a positive way, then it's something I would recommend for anybody to do. Now, you got to make sure your levels are up and stuff. You can't come in there if you're severely underleveled. You're going to have a bad time. But as long as you are kind of close, even if you're a level or two under, you probably will be all right if you got a good team with you. And so I think that, it's a rewarding experience if you got the right people with you.
Finally, we wrapped up the show. Just some open conversation about the August 22nd Bungie showcase and the future of Destiny 2.
I got really good vibes as far as story, right? I think that the story could be epic if they do it right. And there are certain, quality of life things that are coming that I'm excited about. Mm-hmm. If you'll recall, I called you on the show, my first speak pipe, asking about shaders. And I said, there are too many shaders in the game. And not that I don't like shaders, but there's no way to keep them organized. They just revealed that they're bringing a favorite system to the shaders. You can tag like 10 of them, I think, at the top and pin them. Those are your favorite ones. And I was like, That's all I was ever asking for. That's great.
I think you can pin 100, and it's between shaders, transmat effects, and ornaments.
Okay, maybe that's the case. I didn't remember the details.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, and so I'm like, that's fantastic. That's something that they've needed to do for a long time, but they finally did it, and I'm excited about it. So there's certain little things I think that are going to be really exciting about that showcase. But then I think at some point, and I don't know that, I mean, if it's a showcase, I don't know that they're going to spend too much time on anything that we're not going to like. So everything that they're going to talk about there are probably things that we'll all be excited about.
Sure.
But at some point, we're going to walk away and go, oh, they didn't say anything about Gambit. Or they didn't say anything about Crucible. They didn't say, and I think that there may be some disappointment there. But I'm really excited about what's coming. And if you're asking me what I think it'll be.
Yeah, what's the show the contents of the show? What do you picture? What are your expectations?
I expect we're going to get a preview for the coming season. Mm-hmm. I think it's obviously Savathun. It's just, we know that going in. I hope it's not you spend all season trying to find her stupid ghost. And then you finally find it in the last week, and she wakes up, and then that's the last thing you see. I hope that seems kind of lame to me. I hope that she's revived much earlier on, and you spend the majority of the season dealing with her instead of looking for her. But then I think we're going to get a preview for Final Shape, and I'm excited about that. I think they're going to be a new subclass. I think we're going to get a new power, a new darkness power. It only makes sense. There's 3 light powers. There's 2 dark powers. We got 1 more expansion left. They have to even it out, I think. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, they've promoted this idea that neither light or dark is good or bad. They're just 2 sides of the same coin. So if there's 3 light subclasses, there's got to be 3 dark subclasses. It's just the only thing that makes any sense. So I think we're going to get a new dark subclass, and which is odd because it'll be, to my knowledge, the first time we've gotten 2 subclasses back to back in 2 expansions. But I'm excited about that. Apparently, from what we've heard, the Final Shape. See, this is what I don't know, and this is what I'm leery about. Will the Final Shape be 8 missions and then it's over and then the story's done? Well, then what do we do for the next year?
They stated in the TWAB last week's State of the Game. In fact, they mentioned that the campaign missions and the subsequent raid will end the Light and Dark saga right then and there.
Right. So then the question becomes for me, and I knew that the raid was the end cap on it, but then the question becomes for me, well, what do we do for the next year then?
That's my next question is what do you think the future of Destiny 2 after the Final Shape's going to be? So
either I'm just hazarding guesses at this point.
I think we all are. But I've done my hot take out.
But either we get cause that'll all be in one season, right? So either we get 3 seasons then of them just doing reprised content, here's this raid back that we had locked away, and here's this back and now you can play through the Red War again if you want to. Maybe they'll do that kind of thing.
Okay.
But then at some point they said there's a next chapter, right? There's a next, the beginning of a new saga. So the question is I don't think they can bring out the front part of a new saga immediately. That doesn't make sense to me. Because they can't bring out an expansion and turn around 3 months later and start a new expansion. There's no way they can put it together that fast, or at least I wouldn't think.
What if this happened though? What if we did in the final raid? Of course, we're probably going to face the witness, right? Mm-hmm. What if they throw us in a black hole and we're transported to a whole new universe? There's the next story of Destiny. I thought about this today. I mean, if something like that happened where we just start fresh, boom. Here we are.
I've been convinced.
Guardians.
Yeah. I've been convinced for a long time that we were moving after Final Shape out of the Sol system. We were moving into further out into space.
They can get more credit too.
Yeah. And so that leaves and Drifter has dropped a lot of illusions to this about what's out there.
True.
Past our system. Mm-hmm. And so I think he's hinting that there's things out there that we've not seen. The Vex, I think, are going to play heavily into whatever comes next.
Okay.
But, as far as my question is not so much how that takes place as much as it is when it comes, right? Will they spend 3 seasons after the Final Shape expansion, whatever season that falls in, and then you got 3 seasons? Will they spend the next 3 seasons leading up to that? And so will there be story that's not, that's in between story, right? Mm-hmm. So story, and here's hear me out. The Final Shape drops. next February or whenever. We play through the 8 missions or 10 missions or however many there is, and then the story's over. Then there's a raid that pops a few weeks later. We play through the raid, and that's done. Final Shape is over. And so the game, for all practical purposes, feels like it's done, right? And then the next season starts. And then the next season, suddenly there's something happening, and we don't quite know what it is. And so it feels more like seasonal content because it's not an expansion with a big story, but they're breadcrumbs leading to that next expansion. So maybe there's trouble on Europa. Maybe there's trouble on Titan. And then we have to go investigate that. And we find trail pointing to something big coming. And that thing that's pointing to something big coming over those 3 seasons is the thing that keeps leading us to whatever the launch is of the new thing past Final Shape. I think that may be the most likely thing that happens.
Okay. That's plausible. Okay, I can see that happening. Hey, your guess is as good as mine, and I think we all have our prognostications of what we think is going to happen after Destiny 2, if it's going to be a Destiny 2.
As long as they don't say, well, that's it, we're done, go play Marathon.
I don't think they would do that. Here's the reason I think they have to jump right into another campaign. I think this is going to be a double campaign year. I know that's a bold statement. That's a lot of work, right? Think about this. Is it just me? Or does it seem like Destiny 2 is kind of like a ghost town right now as far as developers? It seems like there's enough staff to keep everything running and keep the lights on, keep the light switch flipped on, right? But I feel like there's something bigger that they're working on. But
I won't say you're crazy as far as 2 expansions back to back, and here's why. Sony gave Bungie however many billions of dollars for their acquisition. Bungie should be loaded with money. When they act like
hopefully
they can't,
employees too,
right? And when they act like they can't afford to create Crucible maps, and they can't afford to create, Gambit maps, we just don't have the resources. To say what now? So maybe the reason that we're not getting any of that stuff is because they're working double time to try and put together 2 campaigns in the same year. I mean,
even Joe, who put out the State of the Game, quote, put out the State of the Game last week, said, listen, I'm going to be pulling from all kinds of departments to talk about everything because I got my head down. My head's down right now. I'm all in trying to work on the next thing for Destiny. And I still don't think it's Final Shape. I think Final Shape, they're maybe putting the finishing touches on, but I think what they're really heads down on right now is that next iteration of Destiny. You know why I think that? Because what is the one thing I've heard from everybody that has talked about the Final Shape is, well, I got to stick around to see how it ends, but then after that, I'm gone. I'm done with Destiny. I'm so tired of Destiny 2. I'm over it. But I'm sticking around because I want to know. I want to hear the end. I want to see the end of the story, right? That's why you stick through a bad movie. You want to know how it's going to end. Not saying Destiny's a bad movie, but you get my point.
No, yeah.
But I think Bungie knows this. And because they know that they hear all this on Twitter that people are going to be bailing as soon as the final icon, I think they realize this is a critical time to keep their community intact and not wander off into something else. Now, the only thing that I'm ambiguous about here is that transfer from Destiny 2 to whatever the next iteration is. I don't know how that torque converter is going to work. You see what I'm saying? How they're going to link the end of that raid or the end of the campaign into the next. And that's where I have this weird idea about some kind of portal or, could be a Vex portal. Who knows? Some kind of portal or some kind of black hole we jump or die or fall into or pushed into by the witness or whatever, snaps our fingers. Who knows? Maybe it's the Thanos effect. I don't know. And we just are in a totally different place, not knowing where the hell we are. None of the planets make sense. They don't look like anything in our universe. And just think where Destiny could go there. I may be giving Bungie way too much credit here, but if they can pull that off, if that is in fact what they're doing and they can pull that off.
If they're putting out state of the games that are lackluster, they're taking a super risk in running off players before they have this giant, colossal, boy, aren't you glad you waited for it? We've got so much here at the end.
I hear you, man.
And it kind of is a real risk on their part. They're just banking that people aren't going to leave and stay gone.
I think they know we're true Bungie fans, and even if it's Halo, and I really think It's a gamble. No doubt it's a gamble that if they are sandbagging right now and they just can't tell us what's coming up. They just can't tell us. And
I keep hearing mixed numbers. I keep hearing on one hand that the game is slow right now and everybody's off playing Diablo or whatever they're playing. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I hear numbers saying that, well, if you look at the stream numbers, the game's got as many new players as they've ever had.
That's what they're saying.
And it looks so. It's weird. On one hand, you're telling me that the game is suffering. On the other hand, you're telling me that the game is healthy and strong. I don't know what to believe.
Well, I did look at the Steam numbers I think it was last week when we were talking about this. They are down about 25% right now, but it's always been that way. It's the end of the season. The story's gone. The weekly story's gone. A lot of people are like, okay, I got the story. I don't really care about this other stuff, especially Gambit, and I'm out of here. I'm going to go play Diablo.
Right.
So, yeah.
So you think they'll all come flooding back?
I think they will, man. I think, like I mentioned in one of my shorts this week, as a community, we are ravenous for content. Bungie puts any content out, we just suck it right up. We do.
Yeah.
We just devour it. And then people are standing around with their hands in the air going, what's next, Bungie? What else you got? What else you got? So I think this is the reason they're so busy right now, is I think they realize that they have to capture those eyeballs. And the only way they're going to do it is at the end of the raid or an epilogue at the end of the season. I don't know how they're going to do it, man. But when they have to connect people that as soon as they finish that story are transported somewhere else into a whole new genre, a whole new environment. I think that's the only way they can pull it off. The problem is there's other people who haven't played the campaign yet. So all I can figure is slowly but surely the population's going to slowly shift over to the new thing after they play the campaign. I don't know. They might not even have a season. They might not have a season bar during the campaign. It may be a campaign stripped down bare bones version. And it'll be like Witch Queen. You'll play everything. And when you're done playing everything, then everything opens up. I have such high hopes because there's nothing right now that competes with Bungie. People can say Diablo till they're blue in the face. It's a top-down shooter. It's not a first-person shooter. It's a totally different game. And yes, I realize that Diablo, I'll say it correctly for you, that Diablo is a competitor because it is a looter type game. There is loot and builds, and it's an MMO. It's an RPG.
Right.
So based on that, yeah, it is competing only because, to be honest, you either have your hardcore fans. I have a guy who plays Diablo like religiously, and he's a Destiny player too. And when Diablo has something new out, he is gone from Destiny, but he's always back to playing Destiny again. I think it's a balance of who's bored with what game, and they just shift back and forth. I think the players in Diablo are very similar to the players of Destiny as far as they're looking for builds and loot and what am I going to get for doing this and give me a reward for this, etc. But I think I'll reiterate it. I think Bungie knows that if they don't seamlessly push you into this next iteration of Destiny, if they even do an epilogue, half the population may be onto something else. Yeah. But like I told Hazel last week, I said they're going to have one of these quote leaks around sometime around Final Shape, where people go, "What the hell was that?" And then you'll have YouTubers and content creators superimposing the planet that they saw on the 20-second blurb trailer onto our universe and going, see, it doesn't even match. It doesn't even belong in our universe. What is going on? And that's all they're going to need. So who knows?
Yeah. It's up in the air. I'm excited about it either way. I have not played an ounce of story from this game that I've been disappointed with.
Oh, it's been fantastic. The lore.
Yeah, and everybody.
Yeah, if you get into the lore, it's even more. It's even better.
Everybody gives kind of the Lightfall campaign a hard way to go, but I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. Strand, I think, is a cool new subclass, and I enjoyed the story a ton. The only thing I don't like is Nimbus. He just gets on my nerves a little bit, but other than that, Lightfall was amazing, and I enjoyed it. And then the fact that they didn't give us all the and I know even you have complained that we got the witness reveal after Lightfall campaign, but I was kind of fine with that because I like the idea that they kept us engaged through the year. If we had it all dumped at the beginning of the year, then what is there to do in the middle of the year?
Right.
So I'm happy for him to string it out a little bit. And it's, to me, it's like Lightfall. It's not Lightfall campaign that's over and done with in a few weeks. It's the Lightfall year. It's the year of Lightfall. And so
right.
To me, Lightfall is a continuous story that is told over the course of 4 seasons.
Yep. And Hazel called that. He said that's the way it was going to be. And someone was calling him out today saying, well, how can you say that's a good thing, putting this story across all these seasons? And Hazel said in the Discord today, he goes, well, I think Bungie has their numbers. I think they probably realized that most people bought that deluxe version of the game where all the seasons were included. So maybe that's what they were banking on. I don't know for sure.
It's what I bought.
There's one thing Bungie has done in the past is boggle my mind on some of the decisions they make in this game. But hey, there's a lot of chiefs, there's a lot of Indians, and who knows who's directing what. That's not my business. As long as they get a good product out, that's all I care about. So, right. Well, damn, man. Good conversation tonight. What I think is inspiring is that a lot of new players who are thinking about playing this game that stumbled upon this podcast, I think you've shared some really insightful things that I think might give them the push to try the game.
Well, I want to say a big thank you to you and to Hazel and to the community, because you guys have kept me here. When I first started playing the game, like I said, I was in over my head. I didn't know what was what. And so I went on an information deep dive. Part of that was looking for podcasts to listen to. As a podcaster, I know that one of the best ways to get information about whatever you're into is to listen to podcasts on it.
Oh, yeah.
And so I immediately started identifying Destiny podcasts, and I listened to a number of them at first. I have whittled it down to probably 3 or 4 that I really like. And this one stood out. And the idea of me and Raza were in a dead clan. I mean, the clan existed, but everybody had kind of gone their separate ways. Nobody got together and ever did anything, ever. And so I looked at him one day and I was like, I'm thinking about leaving the clan. And he was like, well, where are you going? And I was like, I've been listening to this podcast and they're talking about, coming over there and being part of the community, and I'm going to go check them out. And he says, well, report back to me. So a few weeks later, I said, dude, you need to come on. And he said, you try them out and tell me what you think. And you go ahead, because I hadn't joined yet. And he said, go ahead and join and then let me know. And I said, all right, fine. So I went ahead and joined and immediately started introducing myself to people, started trying to find things to do. The first thing I needed to run one night that I needed help with, I got Hammercrasher to help me with it.
Good guy.
And Hammercrasher's like, well, we need a third. And I said, well, let me see if I can get my friend Raza to help me. And I said, Raza, can you come in and help me? So Raza and Hammer got to meet. They hit it off like gangbusters. Yeah. And it was the thing that it took to get Raza to agree to come on in. And so where I can, I'm encouraging people to come be part of what we're doing here. If it hadn't been for Guardian Downcast in the community, I don't know that I'd still be playing Destiny. It's entirely possible that I would have got bored with it and went to something else.
We have had people say, listen, I'm not even playing Destiny right now, but this community is so cool that I check in just to say hi to everybody.
Every morning I'm in there saying, hey, what's up, everybody? Have a good day. Good to see you. Just checking in, because it's almost like a big family might be a strong word, but it's almost like a really tight knit group of people that you really looking forward to talk to. Every
thousands
day.
of them.
Yeah.
I don't know how it's not chaos, but somehow it stays organized.
Yeah.
But, well, yeah, man. Well, damn, man. Thank you very much for tonight. Thanks for coming on the show. And I think, your life inspiration and, your inspiration on how you started playing Destiny and everything, I think a lot of people are going to look into that and be inspired. So I thank you for that, man. Well,
anything you need from me, whether it's somebody to run an activity or whether you need somebody to come in and talk on the show, or whether you just need, to talk to somebody because of something you're dealing with in your life, don't hesitate to ever reach out to me.
I will take you up on that if that happens. Yes, sir.
All right. Take care.
Thank you, sir. And, before you go, how can people find you in our community, man?
All right. Well, so if you're in the Discord community, then you want to look for me. I'm John the Bounty Hunter. I've got one of the new names. So I think they got rid of the numbers at the end of it. So if you just search for that, I think you'll find it. I go by the same thing on Bungie. There's a string of numbers after it, but I don't know what it is off the top of my head. But the easiest way to find me might be to go to either my Twitch page or to Twitter. And so I'm on twitch.tv/John Loveless. There's no H in my name. So JONLOVELESS, or you can catch me on Twitter, twitter.com/John Loveless, and you can interact with me there. And if you do and say, hey man, I want to send you a friend invite in Discord or whatever, I'm like, yeah, we'll hook up. We'll make it happen. So that's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. So
very good. Yeah. I've been seeing you. You've been really hopping on doing the streaming, man. I love seeing that. So, yeah, very cool.
But have a good one.
Well, there it is. Thanks again to John the Bounty Hunter for sharing his time with me. And if you haven't joined his stream, what are you waiting for? I'll have his links down in our show description below. Remember to follow me also. I'm at Todd the Gator. Remember, that's 2 D's and GATR on YouTube. And I have another podcast, Guardian Downcast, where my co-host Hazel and I hear the stories of content creators and, other community members. Those people that you game with in the fire team, but maybe curious what their life is all about. That's where we come in. It's my mission to help new and returning Guardians out there via my YouTube channel and my podcast. So I hope today's episode gave you a little inspiration and can give you that push to try the game Destiny 2 and join in our community. A lot of great people there. Hey, remember, you only get one playthrough in this life, so don't waste it. Thank you all so much for listening. And later, Guardian.
Being a listener of the show, we get to feel like we know you guys pretty well, but it's one-sided. And so the opportunity to share a little bit about myself is exciting to me. So.
Oh, hell yeah, definitely. Okay, let me ask you this. What was your very first car? I'm curious.
My first car was oh my gosh. Okay, I have to think back to it was a Chevy. I'm having trouble remembering the model.
You say Nova, man. I'm on a freak.
No, it wasn't a Nova. It was a little 4-door sedan, little blue car.
Vega?
I didn't have it. I don't remember. It would have been 1990.
Okay, 90s.
No, 92. 1990. I would have been 16 years old in 1992.
Okay.
So a little 4-door blue Chevy sedan. I don't remember the exact model.
Probably like a Citation or
maybe.
90s. Yeah, their models, they went away from the classic models that I always knew. Now they have all these new Equinox and all these weird brands now. I never can keep up with them now. But,
I didn't have it very long because I ended up wrecking it. It drove it into a pond. It sank to the bottom. That was a long story. And I've been a pickup guy ever since that. So. Yeah,
me too. I went the SUV route with an Explorer for about 10 years, and I could not wait to get a pickup truck again. So I jumped at I did it right before the shortage, or right as there was a shortage coming.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, it was rough. That's for sure. Nice.
Well, I've been driving the same pickup for almost 20 years, and I just couldn't be more tickled with it, but it's starting to show its age, so I don't know how much longer it's going to last.
Well, my work truck, I refuse to get rid of. It's a 2006, so that makes it what? Almost 20 years old.
Almost 20. Well, mine's an 05.
Yep. I can't, I paid so much for that damn truck, man. It's hard for me to just sell it. And then I look at what just a plain Jane truck costs. I'm like, wow. And then they got all smaller engines in them now. They're not really built for heavy duty anymore. They're all built on fuel economy.
What's your truck, if I can ask?
It's an F-250. It has the 6-liter turbo diesel in it. The Power Stroke?
Mine's an F-150, 5.4 Triton V8.
Yeah, I know that Triton. I used to have one. Yeah. It's a modular engine.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a strong motor, man. A lot of people put a ton of miles on those motors.
Oh, I got 237,000 miles on it right now.
I had an F-150 90. Damn, I want to say maybe a 2003. No, in it 2001 maybe. It was gold step-side. It was a step-side with the extra cab. And man, it was a good truck. It just wasn't enough for what I was needing to use it for, and I finally traded it up.
Yeah, the only bad thing about having a pickup truck is that everybody needs you to move something for them.
Nah, yeah, I know. I'm too busy. I'm the old crotchety guy. I'm way too busy. Bothered. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm going to be over here tomorrow. Sorry. I wish I could help you.
I had a surgery scheduled for that day. I'm sorry.
Yeah.